We live here now. You said that like it's already decided. I just need to know one thing. Did she already agree to this before you walked through my door?
If this story already hits you in the heart, please subscribe, turn on the bell, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from.
My name is Kobe Demetrius. I'm 40 years old, and until that moment, I thought I understood exactly what marriage meant. I was wrong. 3 hours earlier, everything had felt perfect. The house sat on a quiet hill in northern Atlanta, hidden behind black iron gates and surrounded by tall trees. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline, while soft music drifted through the enormous living room. Friends, business partners, and neighbors filled every corner of the house, laughing and congratulating me. The place wasn't just expensive, it was personal. Because 12 years earlier, I had started my company with nothing more than an old pickup truck, a vacuum cleaner, and a dream that most people thought was ridiculous. I owned Demetrius Cleaning Solutions, one of the largest commercial and residential cleaning companies in Georgia. Today, we clean luxury homes, apartment complexes, office towers, hotels, shopping centers, hospitals, and construction sites across the Southeast. But back then, none of that existed. Back then, I was 28 years old, driving through Atlanta before sunrise, knocking on doors and asking property managers if they needed someone to clean their buildings. Most people said no. Some people didn't even let me finish my sentence. I cleaned offices myself. I cleaned apartments myself. I scrubbed floors, emptied trash cans, washed windows, and spent entire nights polishing hallways while everyone else slept. There were mornings when I slept in my truck because driving home didn't make sense. There were weeks when I wondered if my business would survive another month. But little by little, things changed. One apartment complex became 3, 3 became 10, 10 became 50. 12 years later, Demetrius Cleaning Solutions employed more than 400 people. And standing in the center of my dream home, surrounded by people celebrating my success, I honestly believed that all the sacrifices had finally been worth it. "Kobe, this place is unbelievable," one of my business partners said, raising his glass. I smiled. Trust me, there were years when I couldn't even imagine living somewhere like this. Everyone laughed. Across the room, Brandy was talking to her mother near the kitchen island. She looked beautiful, in a dark green dress, smiling politely as guests congratulated us. For a moment, I felt lucky. We had been married for 7 years. We met when my company was still small, long before the luxury cars and the business contracts. At least, that's what I used to tell myself. Because if I was being honest, Brandy's family had always depended on me more than I wanted to admit. When Marcus lost his job 2 years earlier, I paid his rent for 8 months. When Gloria needed surgery, I covered the hospital bills without hesitation. When Harold's landscaping business collapsed, I quietly loaned him money that somehow never came back. Every single time, Brandy would hug me and say the same thing. Family takes care of family. And every single time, I agreed. But over the years, something changed. Helping stopped being appreciated. It became expected. At family dinners, Harold would casually ask about my next business contract. Marcus constantly joked about moving into my guest house. Tiana spent entire evenings talking about how much easier her life would be if she lived in a neighborhood like mine. At first, I laughed with them. Eventually, the jokes stopped sounding like jokes. That morning, something had felt strange. Brandy had spent hours on her phone. Every time I entered our bedroom, she would quickly lock her screen. When I asked what was going on, she simply kissed my cheek. Just housewarming stuff. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. Around 6 o'clock, guests gathered in the backyard while the caterers brought out dessert. I had just finished speaking with one of my clients when the doorbell rang. Smiling, I walked toward the entrance, expecting another neighbor carrying a bottle of wine. Instead, I opened the door and saw luggage. A lot of luggage. Suitcases, travel bags, cardboard boxes. For a moment, I thought maybe Harold and Gloria were leaving for vacation after the party. "Wow," I laughed. "Where are you all going?" Nobody answered. Gloria simply smiled. Marcus adjusted the backpack on his shoulder. Tiana rolled her suitcase straight into the house without asking permission. Then Harold stepped forward and looked around the foyer with satisfaction. "Beautiful place, son. Thank you," I replied, still confused. "So, what's with all the luggage?" Before Harold could answer, Brandy suddenly appeared beside me. Her expression was calm. Too calm. She grabbed my hand. "Kobe, don't get upset, okay?" I frowned. "Upset about what?" Harold smiled as if he were about to announce wonderful news. "Gloria and I sold our house last month." I blinked. "What?" "Tiana's lease ends next week." I stared at him. Okay, Marcus needed a fresh start. My heart started beating faster. "Harold, what exactly are you saying?" He opened his arms and gestured toward the mansion. Then, with the confidence of a man talking about his own property, he smiled. "We live here now." I laughed, not because it was funny, because my brain refused to believe what I'd just heard. "Come on, Harold. Seriously." Nobody laughed back. Marcus started carrying his boxes toward the stairs. Gloria walked into the kitchen. Tiana pulled out her phone and began recording the living room. And Brandy squeezed my hand. "They be their family." I slowly turned toward my wife. "What did you just say?" She avoided my eyes. "Their family, Kobe. We have more than enough space." The music from the backyard continued playing. Guests laughed in the distance. Champagne glasses clinked somewhere behind us. But inside my head, everything had suddenly gone silent. Because as I looked at the mountain of suitcases sitting in my foyer, a terrifying realization hit me. Nobody was joking. The music from the backyard continued to play. People were laughing. Champagne glasses clinked in the distance. Meanwhile, my father-in-law had just announced that he intended to move into my home permanently. I looked at Brandy, waiting for her to tell me that this was all some ridiculous misunderstanding. Instead, she gently squeezed my hand. "Baby, calm down. We can talk about this later." I pulled my hand away. "Later? Brandy, your entire family just walked into our house with 10 suitcases. What exactly are we talking about later?" Harold laughed as if I were overreacting. "Son, don't make this into a big problem on such a beautiful night." I turned toward him. "A big problem? You just told me that you live here now." Gloria walked past us toward the kitchen island. "Oh, Kobe, relax. We're family." Family. That word again. For years, that single word had convinced me to do things I normally would have refused. Family was the reason I paid Marcus's rent after he lost his job. Family was the reason I covered Gloria's surgery bills without asking for repayment. Family was the reason Harold still owed me tens of thousands of dollars from his failed landscaping business. And apparently, family was now the reason why 4 grown adults thought they could move into my mansion without asking. I forced myself to smile because dozens of guests were still wandering through the house. "Okay," I said quietly. "Let's go upstairs and talk." Harold shook his head. "No need. Everything's already settled." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean, everything's already settled?" Before Harold could answer, Marcus grabbed 2 boxes and started walking toward the staircase. "Which room has the best Wi-Fi?" he asked. I stared at him. "What are you doing?" He stopped halfway up the stairs. "Moving my stuff in." I genuinely thought I had misheard him. "Moving your stuff where?" "Your office looks perfect," Marcus replied. "It's bigger than my apartment." I laughed in disbelief. "My office?" "Yeah, Brandy already showed me pictures." Slowly, I turned toward my wife. Brandy showed him pictures of my office. She crossed her arms. "Kobe, you barely use that room anyway." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "That's where I run my company. It's just a room." "No, Brandy, it's my office." At that exact moment, Tiana walked into the conversation holding her phone. "I was thinking we could repaint the guest rooms," she said casually. "The beige walls are kind of boring." I stared at her. "Excuse me?" She smiled. "Nothing dramatic, just a few renovations." Renovations. In my house. The house I had spent 12 years working for. The house whose mortgage payments came entirely from my company. The housewarming party suddenly felt like a dream turning into a nightmare. I glanced toward the backyard, where my business partners were still enjoying cocktails, completely unaware that my life was falling apart inside. Brandy stepped closer. "Kobe, let's not do this in front of everyone." I lowered my voice. "Then explain to me what's happening." She sighed as though I were the difficult one. "My parents sold their house. Without asking me? They needed somewhere to stay. And your solution was to move them into my house forever. Our house." I froze. "Our house." "Yes, Kobe, that's what marriage means." For the first time that evening, anger started replacing confusion. "No, Brandy, marriage does not mean your parents can show up with suitcases and take over my home." Harold suddenly interrupted. "Watch your tone." I looked at him in disbelief. "My tone? You're talking to your wife's family." I shook my head. "No, Harold. I'm talking to 4 people who entered my house and announced that they live here now." Gloria emerged from the kitchen, carrying one of my crystal glasses. "Oh, stop exaggerating." "I'm exaggerating. Look at all this space," she replied. "There are 8 bedrooms. That's not the point." She shrugged. "Then what's the point?" Before I could answer, Marcus came back downstairs. "The office upstairs is perfect," he announced. "I'll need a bigger desk, though." I stared at Brandy. "Did you know about this?" She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "Brandy, Kobe, please listen." "No, answer the question." She looked down. "We talked about it." My heart sank. "We?" "My parents and I." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You planned this. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "Then how was it supposed to happen?" She remained silent. That silence hurt more than any answer could have. For 7 years, I had believed that my wife and I made decisions together. Apparently, everyone knew about this plan except me. One of my business partners suddenly walked into the foyer holding a glass of champagne. "Kobe, we were looking for you." I forced a smile. "I'll be outside in a minute." As soon as he left, I turned back toward Brandy. "How long?" She looked confused. "What? How long have you been planning this?" She hesitated again. "About 6 months." 6 months. For 6 months, my wife had been secretly planning to move her entire family into my house. 6 months of lies. 6 months of fake smiles. 6 months of pretending that our future belonged to us. Harold stepped forward. "Son, don't make this personal." I laughed bitterly. "Don't make this personal. You're moving into my house. It's not just your house anymore." I looked directly into his eyes. "Actually, Harold, it is." For the first time all evening, the smile disappeared from his face. Brandy immediately stepped between us. "Enough." "No," I replied calmly. "Not enough." She crossed her arms. "What exactly are you going to do? Throw my family out?" I looked around my own foyer. Suitcases, boxes, my mother-in-law reorganizing the kitchen, my brother-in-law claiming my office, my sister-in-law planning renovations, and my wife acting as if all of this were perfectly normal. I suddenly realized something terrifying. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. This was a plan that had been carefully prepared long before tonight. But what I didn't know was how deep that plan actually went. Later that night, after the last guest had left and everyone had gone upstairs, I sat alone in my office, trying to understand how my marriage had collapsed in a single evening. That's when I noticed Brandy's tablet sitting on the desk. The screen was still on, and the message open in front of me changed everything. "Harold, once we're all settled in, Kobe will pay for everything anyway. He always does." Below that message was Brandy's answer. "Don't worry, he has no idea about our plan." I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity. "Don't worry, he has no idea about our plan." The message sat there, glowing in the darkness of my office. Our plan, not their plan. Our plan. My wife's words echoed in my head over and over again. For 7 years, Brandy and I had built a life together, or at least, that's what I had believed. Every major decision in my business had been discussed with her. Every new contract, every investment, every sacrifice had been made with our future in mind. And now, I was discovering that, For the last 6 months, she'd been building a completely different future behind my back. One that didn't include my opinion. One that treated my success as family property. Slowly, I put the tablet down and leaned back in my chair. The house was quiet now. Most of the guests had left hours earlier, but upstairs, I could still hear footsteps. Marcus was already settling into one of the rooms. Gloria was apparently reorganizing my kitchen. And somewhere in the house, my wife was sleeping peacefully after helping her family invade the home I'd spent 12 years building. I looked around my office. The framed business awards, the photographs of my first cleaning crew, the picture of the old pickup truck I had used when Demetrius Cleaning Solutions was nothing more than an idea. Everything in that room represented sacrifice. I still remembered the nights I spent cleaning office buildings at 2 in the morning because I couldn't afford employees. I remembered driving across Atlanta with cleaning supplies in the back seat, hoping a client wouldn't cancel at the last minute. I remembered the humiliation of being laughed at by property managers, who thought a commercial cleaning company could never become something serious. Back then, nobody from Brandy's family had believed in me. Harold used to joke that I would spend my entire life mopping floors. Marcus once asked me when I planned to find a real career. Even Gloria had encouraged Brandy to date someone with more stability. But now that my company was successful, suddenly everyone wanted a piece of the life I had built. I opened the message thread again. There were hundreds of conversations. At first, I thought they would only be about moving arrangements. I was wrong. My heart sank with every message I read. Harold, the master guest suite should become our room. Kobe won't object. Brandy, he'll need time to adjust, but he'll eventually accept it. Tiana, Marcus can take the office upstairs. Brandy, that's what we're planning. I clenched my jaw. They weren't discussing possibilities. They weren't asking for permission. They had already decided. Then I found the message that completely changed everything. It had been sent 3 weeks earlier. Harold, once I sell my house, this place becomes our retirement plan. My eyes widened. Underneath, Brandy had replied with a laughing emoji and a sentence that made my stomach turn. Kobe makes more than enough money to take care of everyone. For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. Retirement plan. They had sold Harold's house. They had no intention of staying temporarily. They planned to live in my mansion permanently while I paid for everything. Electricity, food, property taxes, insurance, every expense. And somehow, my wife thought this was normal. I stood up from my chair and walked toward the window overlooking the backyard. The lights from the swimming pool reflected against the glass. Just a few hours earlier, that same backyard had been full of laughter and celebration. Now it felt like a prison. Suddenly, I heard footsteps in the hallway. The office door opened. Brandy walked in wearing pajamas. "You still awake?" I turned around slowly. "We need to talk." She sighed. "Kobe, it's 2 in the morning. Perfect. Then you should finally tell me the truth." Her expression changed instantly. "What truth?" I grabbed the tablet from my desk and held it up. "The truth about your family's plan." For the first time that night, I saw genuine panic in her eyes. She quickly walked toward me. "You went through my messages. You promised your family they could move in 6 months ago." "Kobe, listen." "No, Brandy, you listen." My voice remained calm, but inside, I was furious. "You promised my office to Marcus." She stayed silent. "You promised the guest suite to your parents." Still silent. "You let your father sell his house because you expected me to support everyone for the rest of my life. It's not like that." "Then explain it to me." Brandy crossed her arms. "They're my family. And I'm your husband. They needed help. You could have talked to me. I knew you'd say no." Those words hit me harder than anything else. She knew. Deep down, she knew this was wrong. That's why she had hidden everything. 6 months, Brandy. She looked away. "I didn't know how to tell you." I laughed bitterly. "You didn't tell me because you weren't asking me." The room fell silent. After a few seconds, Brandy finally spoke. "You have this huge house, 8 bedrooms, more money than we'll ever spend. Why can't you just share it with my family?" I stared at her in disbelief. Because at that moment, I realized something terrifying. Brandy genuinely believed she had done nothing wrong. In her mind, my success automatically belonged to everyone around her. The sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the risks, the years of uncertainty. None of it mattered. She only saw the result. I placed the tablet back on my desk. Let me ask you something. What? If my company had failed, would your family have moved into a tiny apartment with us? She didn't answer. Would Harold have sold his house to help us survive? Silence. Would Marcus have worked nights cleaning office buildings with me? Brandy lowered her eyes. I already knew the answer. No, I said quietly. They only showed up because I succeeded. She shook her head. That's not fair. No, Brandy. What's unfair is turning my home into your family's retirement plan without even asking me. She opened her mouth to respond, but I was already walking toward the door. Where are you going? To fix a problem that should never have existed. I walked downstairs, grabbed my phone from the kitchen counter, and stepped outside into the cool Atlanta night. At 2:34 a.m., I made 3 calls. The first was to my lawyer, the second was to my accountant, the third was to my business partner. By 3 o'clock in the morning, I had learned something that changed everything. The mansion wasn't legally owned by Kobe Demetrius. 3 years before my wedding, my attorney had convinced me to place the property and several assets inside a trust created to protect my company. Brandy's name wasn't on the deed. It wasn't on the trust. It wasn't on any ownership document. Legally, neither she nor her family had any right to live there without my permission. For the first time since Harold had walked through my front door with his suitcases, I felt calm. Very calm. I returned inside the house. Upstairs, I could hear laughter coming from one of the guest rooms. Brandy's family was celebrating. They thought they had won. They thought the mansion was theirs. They had no idea what was about to happen. At exactly 3:17 a.m., my phone vibrated. It was my attorney. I answered immediately. Kobe? Yes. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. Then he said the words that would change everything the next morning. Everything is ready. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about contracts, cleaning schedules, or business meetings. I was thinking about betrayal. I sat alone in the kitchen, staring through the giant windows as the first rays of sunlight spread across the backyard. Usually, mornings in this house brought me peace. That morning, it felt like I was sitting in someone else's home. Around 7 o'clock, footsteps echoed from the second floor. Marcus came downstairs first, wearing sweatpants as if he'd lived there for years. Morning, he said casually, opening my refrigerator. My refrigerator. Not even 24 hours had passed, and he was already acting like the owner of the place. A few minutes later, Gloria entered the kitchen, carrying one of my coffee mugs. You know, Kobe, we should probably replace these cabinets eventually. I looked at her in disbelief. Replace the cabinets? She nodded. Something brighter would make the kitchen feel more welcoming. I almost laughed. My kitchen had been designed by one of Atlanta's best architects less than 6 months earlier. Before I could answer, Harold walked in, adjusting his robe. Morning, son. Son. The same man who had secretly planned to turn my house into his retirement plan was calling me son. Finally, Brandy came downstairs. She sat beside me and smiled. Did you sleep at all? I looked at her for several seconds. Not really, she sighed. Kobe, we can make this work. I slowly put my coffee cup down. No, Brandy, we can't. For the first time that morning, everyone became quiet. Harold crossed his arms. What exactly is that supposed to mean? I stood up from my chair. It means I'd like everyone in the living room in 10 minutes. Marcus frowned. Why? Because we need to have a conversation. Harold shrugged. Fine. 10 minutes later, everyone was seated in the enormous living room. The atmosphere felt strangely relaxed. Marcus was scrolling through his phone. Gloria was talking to Tiana about furniture. Harold looked completely comfortable, sitting on my couch as if he'd owned it for years. Brandy sat beside him, convinced that I had finally accepted reality. None of them knew what had happened at 2:34 in the morning. I remained standing. I want to make something clear. Harold smiled. Good, because we've been talking about some changes around here. I ignored him. For the last 12 years, I've worked every single day to build my company. Nobody answered. I cleaned offices at night. I looked at Marcus. I cleaned apartment buildings myself. I looked at Gloria. I spent years sleeping 4 hours a night. I looked at Brandy. And every decision I made was to build a future for my family. Brandy nodded. Exactly. That's what we're saying. I shook my head. No, that's not what you're saying. Harold's smile disappeared. What are you talking about? I pulled a folder from the table beside me. This house doesn't belong to all of us. Brandy frowned. Kobe, I continued. It belongs to me. Harold laughed. You're married. Half of everything belongs to Brandy. Actually, it doesn't. The room suddenly became silent. I opened the folder and placed several documents on the coffee table. 3 years before our wedding, this property was transferred into a trust. Brandy's expression changed instantly. Harold leaned forward. What trust? The trust that legally owns this house. Marcus sat up straight. What does that mean? It means, I said calmly, that Brandy's name isn't on the deed. Nobody spoke. It means that this house isn't marital property. Gloria looked confused. What are you saying? I'm saying that nobody in this room has the legal right to live here without my permission. Harold stood up immediately. That's impossible. I slid the documents toward him. Read them. He grabbed the papers, his confidence disappearing with every page. Brandy looked at me in complete disbelief. You never told me that. I stared at her. You never told me that your family planned to move into my house. The room became completely silent. Marcus stood up. So what? You're kicking us out. I took a deep breath. No. Everyone looked relieved for a moment. Then I finished my sentence. I'm giving you exactly 4 hours. The relief vanished instantly. Gloria's eyes widened. 4 hours? Tiana jumped to her feet. You can't be serious. I'm very serious. Harold slammed the documents onto the table. After everything we've been through, you're throwing family into the street? I couldn't help but laugh. Family? I slowly walked toward him. You didn't come here to celebrate my success. Nobody moved. You came here to take ownership of it. Harold's face turned red. Brandy is your wife. And I'm her husband, I replied. Yet somehow, everyone in this room made plans about my home without even speaking to me. Brandy stood up, tears forming in her eyes. Kobe, please. I turned toward her. For 6 months, you lied to me. I was trying to help my parents. No, you were trying to use me. She shook her head. That's not true. Really? Then explain the messages. The color drained from her face. Harold looked at her. What messages? I pulled out my phone. Once we're settled in, Kobe will pay for everything anyway. Nobody said a word. Then I read Brandy's reply. Don't worry, he has no idea about our plan. Gloria slowly sat back down. Marcus looked at his sister in shock. Brandy burst into tears. Kobe, I didn't mean it like that. I looked directly into her eyes. Then how did you mean it? She had no answer. At that exact moment, the doorbell rang. Harold frowned. Who is that? I walked to the front door and opened it. Outside stood 2 professional movers and 3 black SUVs. Behind them, a hotel manager held several envelopes. I stepped aside. Good morning. Come in. The manager nodded. Everything has been arranged, Mr. Demetrius. Harold stared at me. What is this? I calmly looked around the room. The movers will help you pack. Gloria covered her mouth. Marcus couldn't believe what he was seeing. Tiana grabbed her suitcase. Brandy stood frozen. And these envelopes contain reservations for 3 suites at the Grand Atlanta Hotel, paid in full for 2 weeks. Harold exploded. You planned this? I nodded. Right after I discovered what all of you planned. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Brandy finally broke down. I'm sorry. I looked at the woman I had loved for 7 years. The woman I thought was my partner. the woman who had chosen everyone except her husband. And for the first time, I realized something important. Love without respect eventually becomes exploitation. I picked up my car keys and walked toward the door. Behind me, nobody said a word. Before leaving, I turned around one last time. My success was built with hard work, sacrifice, and honesty. I looked directly at Brandy. A marriage cannot survive where honesty doesn't exist. Then I walked out of the house. As the front door closed behind me, I understood something I wished I had learned years earlier. Helping people is generosity. Being used is something completely different. And sometimes, the people closest to you mistake your kindness for permission. This story teaches that love and generosity must always be balanced with healthy boundaries. Kobe spent years building his cleaning company through sacrifice, discipline, and hard work, believing that success meant carrying everyone around him. However, he learned that kindness without limits can sometimes be mistaken for weakness. The story also highlights one of the most important foundations of marriage: honesty. Brandy's greatest mistake was not wanting to help her family. It was making life-changing decisions without communicating with her husband. Trust cannot survive where secrets and manipulation exist. Another lesson is that financial success does not create obligations for extended family members. Helping relatives should come from mutual respect and gratitude, not from entitlement. True family support is based on communication, consent, and appreciation. Finally, the story reminds us that protecting our achievements is not selfish. Setting boundaries does not mean that we love people less. It means that we respect ourselves enough to prevent others from taking advantage of our sacrifices. Real love grows through partnership, honesty, and respect, not through exploitation.